Welcome back to our channel, True Crime Chronicles. We're thrilled to have you back with us as we delve into the abyss of true crime. If you're new here, we're a dedicated team of investigators, psychologists, and history buffs, unearthing the most chilling stories from the annals of criminal history. We're grateful for the support you've shown us, and if you appreciate our content and want to contribute to our mission, consider supporting us on Patreon for as little as $1. Your contribution helps in our deep dive research to bring you these fascinating yet spine-chilling stories. Today, we're about to dive into the dark world of Ted Bundy, a name that evokes a chilling sensation in the world of forensic psychology and criminology. But before we begin, we'd like to know, what aspect of true crime stories fascinates you the most? Is it the psychological analysis, the investigative process, or the historical context? Perhaps it's the personal stories of those affected or the societal implications. Whatever it is, we'd love to hear from you. So don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and leave your thoughts in the comments section. Now fasten your seatbelts as we unravel the enigma that is Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy, a name synonymous with the darkest corners of the human mind. A name that sends chills down the spine of anyone familiar with his story. A name that, for many, represents the embodiment of evil. Yet, paradoxically, a name that is also associated with charm and charisma. This is the enigma that is Ted Bundy. Born Theodore Robert Bundy in the mid-20th century, his early life seemed to be that of an average American boy. He was raised in a middle-class family, excelled in school, and was known for his good looks and compelling personality. He was the boy next door, the classmate you'd want to be friends with, the guy you'd want your daughter to bring home. He was, in many ways, the epitome of the American dream. But as we would come to discover, there was nothing average about Ted Bundy. Behind that affable smile and engaging conversation was a mind that harbored dark fantasies, a heart that lacked empathy, a soul that was devoid of remorse. B-roll change here. Bundy's charisma was not just a personal trait. It was a weapon. It was a tool he used to gain the trust of his victims, to lure them into a false sense of security, to make them believe they were safe in his company. It was this charisma that made him stand out, that made him memorable, that made him a media sensation when his true nature was revealed. His charm was a mask, a disguise, a veil that hid the monstrous reality beneath. Parole change here. This dichotomy, this contradiction between the public persona and the private self, is what makes Ted Bundy such a fascinating figure. He represents the worst fears of humanity. The fear of the unknown, the fear of the monster hiding in plain sight, the fear that evil can exist in the most ordinary of individuals. B-roll change here, yet beneath this charming facade lurked a monster. Bundy's life took a dark turn in the late 1960s. As the decade was drawing to a close, a sinister change started to take root in the seemingly ordinary life of Ted Bundy. This was the onset of a series of heinous crimes that would terrorize the nation for years to come. His first known crimes were of a seemingly less violent nature. Reports of multiple burglaries began to surface in his local area. Valuables disappeared, homes were violated, and an undercurrent of fear started to ripple through the community. But this was just the beginning, the tip of the iceberg of Bundy's descent into darkness. Bundy's criminal activities soon escalated from burglary to assault. His victims were often young women, unsuspecting and vulnerable. He had a peculiar method of luring his victims. He would often feign injury using crutches or a cast and ask for help. This was a ruse, a carefully constructed deception to lure unsuspecting women into his clutches. And it worked. Time and time again, his manipulation skills were chillingly effective. Bundy was not just a physical predator, he was a psychological one too. He exploited the kindness and trust of his victims, twisting it into a tool for his own dark purposes. It was this ability to manipulate, to charm, to deceive that made him such a terrifying figure. But the worst was yet to come. The assault soon escalated to murder. Bundy's first known murder victim was a young woman in her 20s. Her life was brutally cut short, her future stolen away in the most horrific of ways, and she was just the first of many. Bundy was transforming from a petty burglar to a ruthless killer. a change that was as alarming as it was horrifying. His actions were not just crimes, they were a violation of trust, a betrayal of the most basic human values. These were the first steps on his path to becoming one of America's most infamous serial killers. The descent into darkness had begun, and there was no turning back. Throughout the 1970s, Bundy's reign of terror spanned multiple states. This was a time when the name Ted Bundy sent chills down the spine of many Americans, leaving a trail of fear and uncertainty in its wake. Bundy was not a common criminal. He was a master manipulator, with an uncanny ability to blend into society. He was the guy next door, the handsome stranger, the charming individual who seemed as ordinary as anyone else. Yet beneath this veneer of normality lurked a monster of unimaginable cruelty. Bundy's killing spree was as wide-ranging as it was horrific. From Washington to Utah, from Colorado to Oregon, he left a trail of young women brutally murdered in his wake. The exact number of victims remains unknown, adding a chilling layer of mystery to his already gruesome legacy. His modus operandi was chillingly consistent. Bundy would often feign injury or disability to lure unsuspecting victims into his clutches, only to unleash his violent urges once they were in his control. His ability to gain the trust of his victims, coupled with his intelligence and charisma, made him a formidable adversary for the law enforcement agencies on his trail. Despite his cunning and evasion, the law eventually caught up with him. In August of 1975, Bundy was arrested for the first time in Granger, Utah. The police found suspicious objects in his car, including a crowbar, a ski mask, handcuffs, and other items that suggested he was planning another horrific crime. His arrest was a moment of relief for the public and the authorities alike. Yet, even in custody, Bundy's cunning and manipulative nature shone through. He maintained his innocence, using his knowledge of law and his charm to persuade those around him. His arrest marked the end of his reign of terror, but it was only the beginning of a series of trials and escapes that would further cement his infamy. But this arrest was far from the end of Bundy's story. His cunning, his escapes, and his eventual downfall would continue to shock the world, leaving an indelible mark on the annals of true crime history. In custody, Bundy proved to be as cunning as he was ruthless. Within the confines of the courtroom, Bundy defied expectations. He didn't cower, he didn't plead. Instead, he turned the court into his stage, his eyes gleaming with a perverse delight. The most shocking of his antics? His decision to represent himself. Yes, you heard that right. Bundy, with a certain degree of legal knowledge, decided he was his best advocate. As he cross-examined witnesses and spouted legal jargon, it was a spectacle that both fascinated and horrified onlookers. But Bundy's audacious behavior wasn't confined to the courtroom. No, he had a flair for the dramatic that extended far beyond that. Not once, but twice, he managed to escape prison. The first escape was rather unassuming. In June of 1977, during a trip to the courthouse library, Bundy simply walked out of the building and disappeared. He was recaptured 8 days later, but not before he had tasted freedom. The second escape was even more audacious. On a cold December night in 1977, Bundy crawled through a hole he had sawed in his cell ceiling and simply walked out of the prison. This time, he was free for 46 days. And in those 46 days, he reverted back to his monstrous habits, leaving a trail of terror in his wake. The audacity of Bundy's escapes wasn't just the fact that he managed to outwit law enforcement twice. It was the fact that he used his freedom to continue his horrific killing spree. He was relentless, ruthless, and utterly remorseless. It was almost as if he was taunting the authorities, daring them to catch him again. Bundy's audacity seemed to know no bounds. His escapes, his courtroom antics, his refusal to stop killing, all painted a chilling picture of a man who reveled in his own monstrosity. A man who, even when cornered, refused to go down without a fight. A man whose story continues to both fascinate and horrify us to this day. The law finally caught up with Bundy in 1978. A year that marked the end of a reign of terror that had gripped the nation. The handsome, charismatic man who had once charmed his victims was now standing trial, facing the consequences of his gruesome actions. Bundy's final arrest was nothing short of dramatic. As he was apprehended following a routine traffic stop, the man who had evaded the law for so long was finally in custody, his freedom stripped away. The trial that followed was a spectacle, capturing the attention of the entire nation. As the evidence mounted against him, Bundy's charm began to crumble, revealing the monster beneath. Despite his attempts at defending himself, the jury found him guilty on counts of murder, rape and kidnapping. His sentence? Death by electrocution. On January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy met his end in the electric chair. His name may have been wiped from the living, but his legacy of horror was far from over. Bundy's crimes left a trail of devastation. He was linked to at least 30 homicides, but some speculate the number could be much higher. Each victim was someone's daughter, sister or friend. Their lives were brutally cut short, their families left to grapple with a pain that never fully heals. The impact of Bundy's crimes extended beyond the victims and their families. His reign of terror rippled through the public consciousness, shattering the illusion of safety. The handsome stranger next door was no longer just a neighbor, he could be a predator. As the years passed, Bundy's name became synonymous with the very essence of evil. His story served as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath a charming facade and the unspeakable acts one human can commit against another. And so, it ends here. A tale of terror, of lives lost, and a nation forever changed. Ted Bundy, a name that will forever be etched in the annals of criminal history. Thank you for joining us as we delved into the chilling abyss of Ted Bundy's life. A journey certainly not for the faint-hearted. Your unwavering support and interest in the often grim world of true crime is what fuels our dedication to bring these stories to light. Remember, your support on Patreon allows us to continue our deep dive research, ensuring we can provide you with the most detailed and comprehensive content possible. If this video resonated with you, or if you have thoughts to share, we encourage you to like, subscribe and comment below. Engage with our content and become a part of our ever-growing community of true crime enthusiasts. So, until our paths cross again in the next exploration, stay safe and vigilant. Keep delving into the dark corners of history with us, reminding ourselves of the potentials and perils that lurk within humanity. Goodbye for now, and remember, knowledge is the first line of defense.